The rise and fall of Rainforest Cafe. What happened to Rainforest Cafe? Hi, I'm Jason, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Company Insight. In this video, I'm going to tell you the story behind the rise and fall of the Rainforest Cafe and what happened to this restaurant chain. Have any of you ever been to a Rainforest Cafe? I went to a Rainforest Cafe a few times in my life about 20 years ago. That might tell you something about how relevant the restaurant chain is in this day and age. Although I still remember the loud tiger and gorilla growls or crash of thunder sounds blaring over those iconic grainy 1990s quality speakers, the one thing I remember the most are the waffle fries. Buttery, soft, crispy, but not too soggy. Those waffle fries made the whole adolescent years worth it. Now, Rainforest Cafe is but a shadow of its previous self. So what actually happened to this once thriving and iconic restaurant? Why was the fall so quick and so drastic? In this video, I'll dive deep into the Rainforest Cafe brand story and provide you with the company insight on the right and wrong that happened with this company and what you can take away. But before we begin, if you guys enjoy topics like this, please click the follow button to know when new company insight clips come out each week. Thanks for doing that, and now let us continue on. How did Rainforest Cafe start? So what is Rainforest Cafe? Rainforest Cafe is a place that simulated eating in a real rainforest and was unlike anything at its time. The concept behind Rainforest Cafe was initially created by fellow entrepreneur Steven Schussler back in 1989 in Bloomington, Minnesota. Strangely, Steven first created the prototype for the business in his modest home, where the neighbors had assumed that he was doing some sort of strange ritual or illegal activity due to the loud bangs, strange noises, and bright flashing lights that would come from his home at all hours of the day and night. Just to give you an idea how crazy Steven was, just imagine over 3,000 extension cords to power sound systems, lights, and fog pumps. Over 40 tropical birds, 2 150-pound tortoises, a baboon, an iguana, and a school of tropical fish housed in 10 300-gallon fish tanks. Over $2,000 in monthly electricity bills. And overall, over $500,000 spent to create a real experience of being in the rainforest at his home. Sounds like something Mike Tyson would do. But all of it eventually paid off. With some luck, he convinced investors to invest, and the first restaurant was opened at the Mall of America in October 1994 to huge fanfare with queues longer than 3 hours outside the mall. So what led to the success of Rainforest Cafe? Personally, I think 3 factors led to the success: a great product, a great experience, and being able to raise tons of investor capital. Success factor number 1, great product. First, Rainforest Cafe had a good product. At its core, they had good quality and tasty food, as aforementioned with those iconic waffle fries. Their cuisine was very on brand with the era, ranging from breakfast to dinner and every meal and snack in between, as well as alcoholic beverages. It was a one-stop family-friendly location with high emphasis on sit-down eating and quality family time. You did not go here to have a quick lunch. It was more of a time-consuming special occasion excursion and a far opposing reach from the fast health and fitness foods craze of today. Success factor number 2, great experience. Second, Rainforest Cafe provided a truly memorable experience. A Rainforest Cafe didn't have waiters and waitresses. It had safari guides. Bartenders were navigators. It even had live animals with fish, and birds were flying around at most locations, while other more exotic animals like big cats popped up in larger locations from time to time. It was a big draw for those people, especially in suburban and city locations that rarely got to see wildlife, let alone while they ate. The appearance of the location was like candy to a child, with the colors and environment looking like a real rainforest. It was a huge winning point among parents who wanted to feed but also entertain their children, and especially to children themselves, who would often convince their parents to take them. After all, we know kids have all the power. The Rainforest Cafe was the hot, trendy place to go in its day. Even several celebrities endorsed it. Like much of this period, and any other period for that matter, showing off was all the rage. If you went to this restaurant, you were sure to brag to your friends the next day about your exotic, extravagant rainforest expedition the night before. If it is good enough for Michael Jackson, it surely was good enough for you. Success factor number 3, great funding. In the following years, rainforest cafes were popping up everywhere from Pennsylvania, California, even Kansas. They were even opening overseas in Europe, South America, and China. The key to getting things moving was investor capital. There wasn't a very high barrier to entry, so the company had the first mover advantage to grow and scale quickly. Luckily, with the great management team, financial investors were excited at the potential for growth, and Rainforest Cafe had an IPO on the NASDAQ stock exchange in April 1995 and $6 per share. By October 1995, shares were trading at $22 a share and all the way up to $50 a share by June 1996. That's an 8 times return at about 1 year, even higher than the modern-day Tesla and Bitcoin returns. The IPO and warrants offering in 1995 brought in $23 million in investment. Capturing the momentum, the company then raised more capital of $74 million in January 1996 to speed track expansion, and another cool $96 million in September 1996. That's a total of $193 million raised in less than 4 years, nearly $200 million to open rainforest-themed restaurants. Everything seemed bright and rosy, but then cracks started to appear in the years ahead. So what happened to Rainforest Cafe? Beneath the shiny veneer on the outside, problems were happening internally. Failure factor number 1, costs overboard. The first problem was that costs were going overboard and the company was burning cash faster than cash was coming in. Back when Rainforest Cafe was a publicly traded company, they gave investment costs to open a Rainforest Cafe in their 2000 annual report as shown here. These figures were provided by management. They had mentioned mall locations cost about $7 million to open. That's about $10 million in today's money after inflation. That is unbelievably expensive to spend that much money opening a restaurant in a mall. Larger icon locations were costing $14 million back in 2000, about $21 million in today's dollar value. The future icon locations they were planning to open would cost over $20 million back then, which is $30 million in today's dollar. $30 million! I can't even believe it. Costs were completely going out of control for the company as they needed to continually raise larger and larger amounts to keep opening new locations. Failure factor number 2, business metrics weakening. And the problem was investors would only continue funding the expansion story if growth was continuing and the stock price kept on going up. That's generally how the game works, but all that would come to an end soon. Revenue growth was slowing. By 2000, revenue for same-store restaurants were falling by close to 20% for year over year. The company started to realize that as they opened new stores, it was difficult to keep same-store sales to continue growing. By 2000, they had opened enough stores and had gotten enough data points to realize that after 18 months of a new store being open, performance was showing that sales would start to fall after this point in time. The issue was described by Nelson Schwartz in the March 1998 Forbes article, fueled by the faddish success of just a handful of outlets. Theme restaurant chains have a history of pursuing breakneck expansion plans. For a while, all the new openings create strong earnings momentum. In most cases, though customer satisfaction wears off, repeat business disappears and market saturation dooms further growth. This exact scenario happened to Rainforest Cafe. Failure factor number 3, cost cutting destroys the Rainforest Cafe experience. By 2000, Rainforest Cafe was in big trouble. After years of revenue growth from $108 million in 1997 to $214 million in 1998, all the way to $263 million in 1999, by October 2000, there was literally no more growth compared to the same period in 1999, even after opening more and more restaurants. To add to the trouble, net income margins were declining every single year from 11% in 1997 down to 5% in 1998 to 2% in 1999. But nothing prepared the company for the losses in 2000, when they reported a net loss of over $100 million for the first 9 months of the year. The company was in a terrible financial situation, with big losses and business metrics worsening as they had no choice but to sell the entire business in a fire sale to Landry's Restaurants, a company that also owns over 600 restaurants, hotels, and casino and entertainment destinations in the United States. They also own Morton's Steakhouse, McCormick and Schmick's, Bill's Bar and Burger, and Bubba Gump Shrimp. Landry's purchased the Rainforest Cafe for $3.25 a share and took the company off the public stock market. Just to give you an idea, that's a loss of over 90% for investors from just a few years back when the share price was $50. That's how bad things had become. Before, the restaurant was known for over-the-top and extravagant presentations. After 2000, as the Rainforest Cafe was taken private by Landry's, not a lot of information is officially known. One thing that was publicly known to people in the industry is that the newcomer, Landry, then massively moved to cut costs. Then soon, because of decreasing revenue and other factors such as customer feedback and desire to gain profits, they cut back on the Rainforest Cafe's initial business model. They lowered their music, changed their aesthetic and graphics inside the restaurants, and most importantly, they got rid of most of their live animals throughout almost all locations. To give examples, live birds were canceled, then the fish were removed. Menu items were changed and cheapened. The iconic volcano birthday cake with shooting sparklers was changed to a brownie tower with plastic. Everything changed to cost cutting, even at the sacrifice of the experience. All the items that were probably the biggest draws for customers all along were completely nicked. Quickly and without warning, most locations fully got rid of these animals, leaving customers confused and unenthused with the prospect of returning. Now, these animals have been replaced with plastic novelty creatures and robotic animal sounds. Without the live animal incentive, customers felt they were no longer paying for a unique and fun experience. They were just now spending their money on an overpriced burger and some flashing lights. Over time, this change made customers disinterested, and they soon realized they would be better off spending their money elsewhere where prices were more affordable. Although Landry's tried to revive the brand since taking over in 2000, net, we can tell that they have been closing Rainforest Cafe locations ever since. Again, as a disclosure to all you guys, there is no official public information on this since 2000, but I've been able to piece together pieces of the puzzle to guesstimate what happened to Rainforest Cafe to the best of my ability. Everything from year 2000 onwards is based on information on the internet and from speaking with people in the industry. When you look in detail on locations opening and closing, it is interesting to tell that even after 2000, the company looks like they did open another 9 locations in the past 20 years. However, at the same time, it seems they closed around 27 locations since 2001. What I've heard from talking with people in the industry is that some locations that were opened were franchise locations where individuals or companies were opening Rainforest Cafes using the Rainforest Cafe branding and probably paying for the fit-out and investment themselves. That probably made sense from Landry's perspective as they already owned the brand and had little to lose from new franchises. However, with so few new franchises opening and some even closing a few years after opening, it's obvious that the business model wasn't working anymore. Again, a lot of information simply isn't available. For example, an interesting fact that there's nowhere online is that Rainforest Cafe officially opened in the capital of Jakarta, Indonesia in 2016. However, after disputes with the owner, the location's name was changed to Madagascar, even though all the interior decorations still look like a Rainforest brand cafe. There is no mention about this at all from the company, as it must have been an embarrassing misstep. Bob Golden, head of Chicago-based food industry consultancy Pentelect, ultimately summed up quite well the problem with Rainforest Cafe. Themed restaurants tend to have a short lifespan. An entertaining setting can get diners to the door, but is no guarantee they'll come back, especially since the food at themed restaurants often isn't a great value. Rainforest Cafe's kids-oriented vibe also limited its audience. There's a novelty factor that wears off pretty quickly, and they've been around a long time. Conclusion. And that brings us to today. Currently, there are only about 22 Rainforest Cafe locations still operating, and even at 22 locations, with the COVID pandemic, more locations are likely to be shut this year. It wouldn't be surprising to see this number falling to 15 or 10 in the coming years as leases come to expire. Based on the analysis of Rainforest Cafe, we can take away the knowledge that although the business ultimately struggled, they clearly did a lot of things right to get to nearly 40 locations at one point. Simply achieving that was a huge accomplishment against all odds. We learned from their business model to be daring and to always strive to be innovative in creating a great product and unique experience while thinking outside of the box when creating a new business. Meanwhile, it's always important to pay attention to cost and business metrics while doing the best to not remove the core characteristics or experience that brought your customers to you in the first place. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching my video. There's a significant amount of research and production that went into making this video possible, so if you wouldn't mind giving the video a like and leaving a comment in the YouTube section below, it would really help out a lot. Be sure to check out some of my other videos like the rise and fall of Orbit's drink and the rise and fall of True Religion. Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned for another episode of Company Insight next week.